Hello, Tattooed Biker. I remember listening to you a while back on Everything Out There, Steve Stockton's radio show, and I wanted to report something that I saw. Now, full disclosure, I did send this report to another researcher, but as far as I know, it's never been on YouTube. I wanted to see what your listeners think about what I witnessed. On Sunday, September 1st, around 3:30 p.m., I was driving from Bellwood, Pennsylvania, in Antis Township, Blair County. This road goes up Scalp Mountain into Sinking Valley, right off exit 41 of Interstate 99. For the short distance, it runs parallel to I-99. Now on the left, there's a pin dot location for winter supplies, followed by a park and ride. And just past that, I pulled off the road to collect some weeds to dry for my wife. As I was pulling over, approximately 50 yards ahead of me, something crossed the road. It came from a patch of woods between that road and the northbound lane of I-99, and then continued up into the woods on the mountain. I can't identify what it was, but I'm certain that it wasn't a deer, a bear, or a dog. It was on all fours and dark colored, somewhere between brown and black, and it stood close to the height of a horse. Now, not a very large horse, but still very tall. I was in a Toyota Tundra, and the back of the truck was level with my hood. The creature looked very lanky, with a thin but muscular build. It had long legs and a head shaped like a dog or a wolf's. Its belly was about 3 feet off the ground as it walked on all fours. I only saw it for about 5 seconds as it crossed the road and climbed the bank into the thick brush. I drove up quickly and jumped out, but it was far too dark under the trees at that moment to see anything. It had already vanished. I'm 58 years old, and I've hunted and fished in Pennsylvania for most of my life. I've spent a significant amount of time in these woods and streams, and I've never encountered anything like this. The creature never looked my way. It simply crossed the road and then disappeared. I have no idea what it was, but it fits some of the description you've talked about before. I just wanted to report this to you. Thank you. Signed, James B. Dear Tattooed Biker, we live in Chicago, and in September of 2017, around 10 p.m., we were walking back from visiting a family member's house when we saw what looked like a giant bat fly overhead. It had large wings and appeared completely black. It passed over us and continued down the street. As we walked further, we saw that the bat had landed across the street from a convenience store at the corner of South Ridgeway Avenue and West 24th Street. We noticed that it was watching us as we approached the intersection. The streetlights there made it very easy to see. And as we got closer, someone came out of the store, and then the creature immediately turned its attention to that person. This individual screamed and ran away. At that point, the bat turned back towards us, opened its wings, and took a step in our direction. My sister and I didn't wait to see what was coming next. We ran back toward West 23rd. The family member's house that we had visited was near the viaduct where the train passes overhead. As we were heading back that way, this large bat let out a shriek and took off again, flying just over our heads before landing about 15 feet in front of us on the road. It stared directly at us and shrieked again. Just then, a car turned onto South Ridgeway Avenue from West 24th Street. The bat then lifted off the road and flew away, leaving us cowering there on the sidewalk. The vehicle continued down the street without stopping, and we hurried back to our family member's house, where her son gave us a ride home. We've never been so scared in our lives, and we dread to think what might have happened if that car hadn't turned the corner when it did. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Signed, Anonymous. Dear Biker, I was born and raised in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and I still live there. The sighting that I want to share happened about an hour west of Philadelphia and half an hour from Valley Forge. I found your channel on Google after searching for Weird Pennsylvania or something similar. One of your videos popped up and I started listening. When I saw that people could send in their encounters, I decided to share mine. I've had 2 experiences with things that I can't explain, and I'll start with the most recent. A few years ago, a friend and I went for a ride to visit another friend. It was March 2020, on a Saturday night, the same weekend the quarantine started. We were on Route 422 around midnight, and it struck us as strange how empty the highway was. On a normal Saturday night, it's busy, but that night we only saw maybe 3 cars in half an hour. After we finished our visit and headed home, it was somewhere between 2:30 and 3 a.m. We were driving westbound on Route 422, again pretty much the only car out there. The eastbound and westbound lanes are separated by a grassy median. We were in the fast lane, between the Collegeville and Royceville exits, when suddenly we passed something in the grass to our left. Now we didn't see it until we were right up on it, and even then we only caught a glimpse for a second. Whatever it was looked like it was on all 4s, maybe eating roadkill, but I could only see it from the waist down. It was much, much larger than a deer, and had long, unkempt, orangish, reddish fur, similar to a red fox but a little lighter. What stood out the most were the legs. They were huge, muscular, and canine looking. The shape of it gave off a sense of danger, like something that you wouldn't want to cross paths with, and something deep down told me it could walk on 2 legs. After we had passed it, I asked my friend, who was driving, "Did you see that?" And he said yes. When I asked what it was, he just said that he didn't know. We didn't bring it up again the rest of the ride. I think we were both processing what we had seen and didn't want to sound crazy. Well, when I got home, I told my boyfriend. He had no idea what kind of animal around here that would match what I described. The next time I saw my friend, the one who'd been driving, we talked about it again, and then we both agreed that whatever it was didn't match any known animals in the area. He's the one who started calling it the Beast. A few months later, another friend was leaving my house when he heard something running across the street, making a low, guttural growl. It scared him straight into his car. Now, he had worked as an animal control officer for years and said nothing around here makes that kind of noise. And then about a month after that, my boyfriend was taking out the trash. When he reached the front door, he heard something loudly scratching and sniffing. He said it kind of sounded like a pig grunt, but it clearly wasn't a pig. And then that October, a friend was sitting in his car in my driveway, waiting for me to come outside. When I walked up, I noticed that his doors were locked. And he told me that he'd heard something that sounded almost human, and it scared him. Once I got in the car, I explained everything I'm telling you here, and he said, "A few months ago, I saw something out on Route 422. Before I could say anything else, he interrupted with, "I saw it too." I asked him what color it was, and he described the exact same shade of fur. And then he told me, when I saw it, it was running on 2 legs across the highway. And once it saw my car, it took off really fast. Faster than anything around here. My heart was pounding while he told me this because I knew that he wasn't lying. I was relieved that someone else had seen it. And he didn't know what it was either, but he estimated it to be about 7 to 8 feet tall and said it looked nefarious. He agreed that the legs looked evil. He saw it around the same time of year I did, and around the same time of night. I drive that highway all the time now, always looking out for it, but I haven't seen it again. Well, that's about it for that story. And I always wonder if anyone else has seen this thing and what it could have been. Signed, Willa. Dear Biker, now this isn't something that I witnessed myself. It's a story told to me by one of the men who allegedly saw it. Now for context, this guy had run in with some questionable crowds and did whatever work he needed to make money. If you catch my drift, that is. He's got a lot of stories, and I mostly consider this one a bit of a tall tale, but there's still a lot of detail in it, more than usual, and it really makes me wonder. Now, according to him, we'll call him Zed here. He had been finishing up some work down in Louisiana back in the late 90s. He and a buddy had a few days to kill and wanted to squeeze in some fishing and hunting, even though it was out of season. Now, one of the guys they had worked with gave them directions to a spot way back in the swamps and marshes, or the bayou, as it's more commonly known, where they could do that without risking getting caught by fish and game. Now, he said the strange thing about this spot is that there were never any alligators there. That's a bit of a red flag, if you ask me. Anyway, early one morning, they set out in their boat before sunrise and made their way deep into the swamps. From what he described, this was a section close to the Mississippi border, routes used by smugglers to move various products across state lines. After a few hours and a couple of detours, their way of admitting that they got lost, they finally reached the spot. There, they shut off the motor and started fishing. Now, the trees were thick enough overhead to hide them from view, and they were sitting in a large inlet, partially sheltered from the rest of the bayou. Now, there was solid ground along two sides, but to reach it, you had to slog through 10 to 15 feet of muck that could suck your boots right off. Zed said as the day went on, the fishing was lousy, but they had beer, so they were in no hurry to leave. Both of them began to notice that, just like their acquaintance had said, there were absolutely no alligators around. Now, normally, you'd see at least one sunning itself or lurking nearby, but here there was nothing. Even the big fish seemed scarce. And that's when they saw a herd of feral hogs coming out of the undergrowth. Now, these hogs wandered right into that deep muck and started rolling, rooting and wallowing like it was their private spa. Zed and his buddy quietly angled their boat closer, and since they had sidearms and wouldn't mind some wild pork if the chance presented itself, the hogs were wary but not afraid, keeping an eye on the boat while they played. Zed said that they realized that they'd have no good way to retrieve a hog if they shot it in the muck, so they just drifted and watched for a better opportunity. But instead, that's when they saw something else entirely. Now, according to Zed, they noticed the mud itself start to move. He said he knew instantly it wasn't an alligator. An alligator would be thrashing around trying to get at the hogs, but whatever this was, it was submerged and creeping forward. The only way he could describe it was that the thing was pushing its way through the muck like a mostly buried bulldozer, heading straight toward the pigs. Zed and his buddy watched as it slowly approached a cluster of hogs. The hogs noticed the movement, but seemed more curious than scared. Now, one of them, a pig that Zed estimated to be 150 to 175 pounds, was the furthest out in the muck. It made the mistake of sniffing toward the disturbance. Zed said that before they could even react, something lunged up out of the mud and latched onto the pig's head and face. As the hog thrashed and screamed, the most blood-curdling sound they'd ever heard, the thing was pulled partially out of the muck, giving them a clear look. That's when Zed realized it looked like an alligator snapping turtle, but of proportions that he had never imagined. He had seen one on display at Bass Pro Shops, the one that grew so large it cracked its tank, but he said comparing that turtle to this was like comparing a chihuahua to a pit bull. The creature was still partially coated in muck, but Zed swore its shell had to be at least the size of the hood of a Volkswagen Beetle. He was a bit of a car enthusiast, and he knew his measurements. He said it had to weigh over 750 pounds. It dragged the screaming pig backwards, toward the deeper water, its massive beak hooked around the hog's skull. Zed said that the struggle lasted only about 30 seconds, but that pig never stood a chance. The turtle pulled it out into the lagoon, and the hog made one final, desperate attempt to break free. Now, according to Zed, hearing something scream underwater is one of the most unnerving sounds you can hear, and Hollywood doesn't get it right. And then everything had gone quiet. Zed and his buddy sat there in stunned silence. Aside from the frothy water and stirred up mud, there was no sign that anything had happened. The rest of the hogs had fled the moment the attack began. Except for the insects buzzing around, the bayou had fallen completely still. Now they didn't know why, but both men said they felt deeply uneasy, like they shouldn't be there, and they left immediately. They couldn't exactly report a Volkswagen-sized snapping turtle to Fish and Game, but they did tell their acquaintance why the area had no alligators. As far as Zed knows, nobody else has ever come forward claiming to see that colossal turtle, but he swore that if it caught a person off guard, it could kill them the same way it killed that hog. Again, this is how the story was told to me. It's not my story, and I'm inclined to believe that it could be true, if exaggerated. But it does go to show that you don't need something as fanciful as a skunk ape or Bigfoot to be nervous about what might be lurking just out of sight. Thanks. Signed, Randy. Dear Tattooed, growing up, I had a childhood friend who lived close by, and we were like two peas in a pod. We were both adventurous, fascinated by the paranormal, loved astronomy, and pretty much lived outside. Now, she was born in Alaska, and her dad had lived there for a long time, so they were very into camping, hiking, fishing, and skiing, you name it. It was with her that I got introduced to fishing, and I did a lot of camping with them. This happened in the mid to late 90s, and we were maybe around 10 or 12 years old. It's been a while, so I can't remember exactly. On one camping trip, we went to this lake in the forest that was surrounded by a meadow. Feeding into that lake was a small stream leading out of the woods. We played in the meadow in the stream all day while my friend's dad fished. Now, the lake wasn't very big, and because it had a meadow all around it, he could keep an eye on us while he fished. While we were messing around by the stream, the wooded area it came from gave me weird vibes. I can't explain it, it just made me uneasy. Anyway, the day faded into early evening, and when it was time to leave and find a camping spot, my friend's dad packed up his gear and we all walked back along this long, winding path through the woods. Once in the truck, we drove to a more remote part of the forest and made our way up a steep road that was so rough and at such an incline that I was convinced her dad was going to break the truck. He had a 4 or 6 cylinder Toyota pickup that was about as basic as a truck could get. I'm not even sure it had 4-wheel drive. But him being an Alaskan outdoorsman with years of experience, I trusted him. We finally made it to the top, which was flat and relatively open, with a big stretch of forest in the opposite direction from where we had driven up. Well, we pitched our tents, got everything set up, and then my friend and I decided to explore the area. We were maybe 50 yards from the tent when we heard this big crack. like a tree branch snapping in the woods behind us. We got quiet and looked that way but couldn't see anything. Thinking it was just a deer, we brushed it off. As we kept walking, we heard it again and whispered back and forth about what it could be, but we didn't stop. It paused briefly, and when we were about 200 yards from the camp, we sat on a boulder looking down a steep, wooded hill overlooking the dirt road we had come from. Suddenly, another cracking branch from behind us. Whatever it was seemed to be following us. Our imaginations ran wild. We came up with everything. A serial killer, a deer, Bigfoot, you name it. When we finally got back to camp, we told her dad what we had heard and how it seemed to be following us. He played it off as a black bear and secured all the food. Later on, my friend confided in me that her dad had taken out his pistol and would be sleeping with it that night. She and I shared one tent, and he slept in his own tent nearby, so we figured everything would be okay. Well, I awoke sometime in the middle of the night to the sound of something or someone walking outside. As I lay still listening, I heard it quietly circling the tent. It sounded like it was walking on two legs because of the rhythm of the steps was so distinct. Whatever it was sounded big. I could hear the weight of each step, if that makes sense. At times, I could hear quiet but deep, heavy breathing. As I lay there, it wandered to other parts of the campsite and then back to our tent, almost like it was walking in a big, repetitive loop. This went on for who knows how long, but it felt like an eternity. Terrified and unable to wake my friend, I lay there listening until I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I told my friend and her dad, but I don't know if they believed me. Strangely, nothing in the camp was disturbed at all. The ground wasn't very soft, and some areas were covered in grass, so there were no footprints. This is just something I've never been able to explain, and it lingers in the back of my mind to this day whenever I go camping. I'll always wonder what it was that walked around our tent all night. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Jen. Hey TB, I think there's something on my grandparents' farm and it creeps me out to my core. I've been a skeptic about paranormal or creepy things my entire life. I've never really believed in that kind of stuff, but the things I've heard and witnessed at my grandparents' farm, it shakes me bad. Now, my grandparents own a large plot of land in central Missouri, and they've had it for around 40 years. I've been there more than 10 times, and every time I go, I get this terrifying feeling that something is out there watching me, like there's always something right behind me. I've also had several strange encounters there that are downright bizarre. My first encounter with whatever this thing is happened when I was around 7 or 8 years old. We had brought our dog Spot, a silver lab that I love dearly, and I was exploring the forest behind the house, just enjoying the summer breeze when my dog started growling, a deep and sinister growl that I'd never heard from him before. I turned quickly to see what he was growling at, but nothing. Just forest upon forest. And as I scanned the area, something shot out of the brush so fast that I could barely register what it was. Before I knew it, it was long gone. I just stood there, stunned by what I'd seen. From the little I caught, it looked kind of like a large coyote, but the speed was unreal. It was like it moved at 90 miles an hour and made no noise. The creepiest part was that the spot it had leapt from didn't even show an imprint. And from where I saw it, it should have easily been able to see where it had been hiding. Shocked, I just decided that I'd had enough and went back inside. My second encounter happened when I was around 10. I was visiting again, and like always, I had that feeling of being watched. The first day was normal, just family time, but when night came around, everything changed. I was trying to sleep in the twin bed that used to belong to my mom's brother. And that's when I heard tapping. Not small taps, but loud ones, almost like banging, coming from the direction of the window. I sat up slowly and looked, but there was nothing there. I assumed it was just some animal. 5 minutes pass, no tapping. I had started drifting off when, boom, a slam, not a tap. Something had hit the window with massive force. I shot upright so fast I almost passed out. I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer, shined it outside, and saw nothing. 10 seconds went by. Still nothing. I was just about to go crawl into my mom's bed when I heard it. This loud screech. Not human, not even close. It was a horrible, dark, blood-chilling sound that ripped through the quiet summer night. I can't describe it, but I remember it perfectly. I froze completely. I couldn't move a muscle. I just sat there like a statue, petrified by what I'd heard. Finally, some base instinct took over and I ran to my mom's room. Strangely, I didn't wake her. I just crawled into bed next to her and lay there all night, wide awake, replaying that terrible screech over and over in my mind. The next encounter happened when I was around 13. I was back at the farm, enjoying myself as usual when my grandpa suggested we go deer watching. I agreed. I'd been doing it ever since I could remember. We took the Polaris out around 6 or 7 p.m. and headed to the eastern pasture, where we usually saw the most deer, and after about 30 minutes we'd only seen a few, far less than normal. And then that weird feeling hit me again. That dreadful sense of being watched, but this time it felt close, like it was right behind me. Though every time I looked, there was nothing there. What really scared me was that my grandpa seemed to feel it too. Now, he's usually laid back and always joking and laughing. The only time I'd ever seen him serious was when my great uncle died. But now, his whole expression had changed. He became alert and tense. He gripped the wheel so tight that his knuckles turned white, and he kept scanning the tree line, like he knew something was following us. And then out of nowhere, he made a huge U-turn and started speeding back toward the house. And I asked him, "Where are you going?" And he answered, "We're heading back to the house." But his voice was somehow cold, like he had just witnessed something horrifying. He floored it, driving back at full speed. When we arrived, he rushed me inside, constantly checking behind us, locking the door tight. His behavior scared me more than anything that I'd experienced out there. I finally asked him, "What the hell is going on around here?" He looked at me with this cold expression and said, "I have some things I need to explain to you." We sat down for about 30 minutes, and he told me that whatever this thing is has been on the property since the day he moved in. He and my mom had experienced the same things during their first years living there. He told me that he's seen it, and that it doesn't like new visitors. That's why I was experiencing everything I was. He explained everything that he had witnessed, and it all lined up with what had been happening to me. He told me that he had always kept an eye on me when I visited, just to make sure nothing happened because he knew this creature better than anyone. We talked a little more, but it was all the same. It was late, and he said that I shouldn't sleep alone, so I slept with my mom. We left the next morning, and I haven't been back since. Now, my last encounter isn't really an encounter, but two things that have happened recently. My sister's horse was brought to the farm for the first time. That first night was awful for the horse. She was normally friendly and outgoing, but the next morning my grandpa found her acting extremely timid, And then he noticed 3 10-inch gashes down her side, like something had clawed her. They tried to say that she ran into a fence, but I just don't buy it. Around that same time, my grandparents adopted a dog named Panda, a Jack Russell, only 2 months old. 5 days later, he was found dead with deep puncture wounds on his body and slashes across his neck. They blamed a bobcat or a mountain lion, but again, I just don't think so. I don't know what the hell this thing is, but something tells me that if I go back, nothing good would ever come of it. Signed, William.
He's got scars on his arms, flames on his chest, rides a steel horse, won't ever rest. Chasing whispers through the foggy pines, searching for truths that slip through time. Moonlight bends where he rolls, the shadows speak. They've got souls, hidden shadows, leather and lore. He's knocking on the other world's door. Bigfoot's howl, dogman's glare, men in black just vanishing there.